You are listening to an Art Media podcast.
We can't send our soldiers into an Israeli city to do their job. You can't do your job in your country. What is Bnei Brak now ex-territory of this country? It's just not part of the country. There's almost an intentional receding of sovereignty. We're sitting, it feels like, on a sovereign quicksand.
Well, I think that we are facing a crisis of anarchy on so many fronts.
Hi, friends. This is Donniel, Hartman, and Yossi Klein Halevi from the Shalom Hartman Institute, and this is our podcast, For Heaven's Sake, in collaboration with Arc Media. Today is Tuesday, February 17th. Our theme for today is Israel's sovereignty crisis. And we're not talking about Iran, even though that is a sovereignty crisis. And part of the experience of living in Israel right now is like everybody's waiting. Everybody's waiting. When is the next stage of the negotiation? What's going to happen? We don't know which night something's going to happen, and our world will be significantly changed, transformed, or not. It's just a sort of this waiting game. But but our sovereignty crisis is not principally a sovereignty crisis which is affecting our borders. It's
because we've proven that we have the ability to meet that sovereignty
crisis. So even October 7th, there was a challenge, there was a violation. Like, we thought that Israel, at least on this level, was sovereign, that Gaza did not pose a sovereignty crisis. Hamas posed a security challenge, but not a sovereignty crisis. And the ease through which it was able to penetrate the borders felt like a sovereignty crisis. Hezbollah, it didn't reach that. Even though when missiles fly in, that's a sovereignty crisis because it's coming from outside. Now, sovereignty essentially means, the definition of sovereignty is to hold on to a territory, your territory, to the exclusion of all others. And we've done well. Israel has always had sovereignty challenges, has always has sovereignty threats and dangers, and we still do. And Iran poses one of the more significant sovereignty crises because, as you said, it's an existential threat. But we're facing now not a sovereignty problem, but a profound sovereignty crisis inside our borders.
In our identity, in our being.
In the functioning of this country. And we're sitting here in this dual mode, on the one hand worrying about the borders, and there's a decay spreading in the country's management of itself, of what it means to be a sovereign country. This week, the whole country received, it wasn't a wake-up call, it was more like a slap, when 2 Israeli soldiers, female soldiers, are attacked in Bnei Brak by a mob.
Which is the largest ultra-Orthodox city.
By a mob of ultra-Orthodox students who are supposed to be in yeshiva, but they get a WhatsApp. There's a WhatsApp, the army's coming to draft, and it's called Code Black. The minute it's sent out on their WhatsApps, and technically, by the way, the kosher phones in the Haredi community don't have WhatsApps. Take that from my wife, as a school psychologist in the Haredi community. The kosher phones have no WhatsApp, but somehow in Bnei Brak, the WhatsApp system is working.
It's a miracle.
It's true. That's right. A phone that doesn't have WhatsApp is somehow able to get WhatsApp. There's a WhatsApp group. It's truly a miracle. That's a great line, Yossi, by the way. And mobs come out. And post-October 7th, we see, our female soldiers are holy now. They're holy. They're on the front lines. No, this is not female soldiers. It's like they stood. Our women were kidnapped. Our women were attacked. Our women fought. There's no separation now between male soldiers, female soldiers. And these female soldiers are attacked. They have to hide. And then the police have to bring them out.
And they're attacked by a mob of people who don't serve in the army.
Who don't serve in the army.
Just to compound the
to,
outrage.
to compound the outrage. And we'll tell the story. We'll talk about that in greater depth. But like, really? It's like the Israeli army and the police, we can't send our soldiers into an Israeli city to do their job. And their job, by the way, was to meet with new draftees to make them aware of some of the things that they're going to be experiencing. You can't do your job in your country. What is Bnei Brak now ex-territory of this country? It's just not part of the country. At the same time that this is happening, the continuing murder of Israeli Arab Palestinians now it's every day. The numbers this last 50 days is 50, 49, 50, 51. Insane numbers every day. 1, 2, 3. And what's going on here? What's going on? And it's as if we're not sovereign over Israeli Arab population. And Minister Smotrich, who I'm going to quote a few times today in the Knesset, turns to an Israeli Arab Knesset member and says, "What do you want? What, is my fault that Arabs are that you're killing each other?" So it's like, what does he mean? Like, who's you? Like, this is not a sovereign, I have no responsibility.
Yeah.
Hilltop Youth today, outside of Hebron, I don't know if it was every time it happens, we call them the Hilltop Youth. But according to Netanyahu, there's only 60 of them, so I don't know how they're so busy and how they're so effective. 100 sheep are burnt, continued violence. And when yesterday the head of the Shabak, Israel Security Forces, says, "I am now going to be directing attention and resources to combat Jewish terror," he gets threatened by the deputy Knesset speaker member and says, "Hishamer lecha in Hebrew, beware, be careful. Don't pursue the path of the others who didn't make a distinction between Jewish terror and Palestinian terror and lost their jobs." And he basically wants to say, I'm sovereign here. So it's not an accident. There's almost an intentional receding of sovereignty. And we're sitting, it feels like, on a sovereign quicksand. Yeah. And what we need to talk about it, because this is one of the most significant issues facing Israel today, the elections, the future. What does it mean to be Am Chovshi Ba'artzenu, as our anthem says, to be a free people, a sovereign people in our country? Yossi, how do you understand this phenomenon?
Well, I think that we are facing a crisis of anarchy. On so many fronts. The incident in Bnei Brak is a textbook case of loss of sovereignty. And it begins most basically with the question of the draft. Now, we've been framing the draft, we meaning the Israeli public, the Israeli Jewish public that wants the arrangement with the ultra-Orthodox to be changed. We've been framing that as an issue of join us, be part of the defense of the Jewish people. And of course, at its core, it is that, but it is also very much a question of sovereignty. A country that can't, for whatever reason, political reasons, because we're afraid of violence in that community, that can't impose what the overwhelming majority of citizens and the army itself regards as a critical security need, is a crisis of sovereignty. And I think we need to expand the dimensions of the crisis with the ultra-Orthodox to really put it in that framework. Now, what happened particularly in Bnei Brak the other day was just a classic example of how the state institutions abrogate the most basic responsibility toward themselves as upholders of national sovereignty. So what happens? Two soldiers, as you put it, go into Bnei Brak, and the police. What's the response of the police? The army should have coordinated with us. You don't just send 2 soldiers in, as you put it, to an Israeli city. You have to treat Bnei Brak as if it's Jenin. And just
I'm laughing, and it's like
or Shechem, Nablus. When Breslover Hasidim go to pray at Joseph's tomb, you have to coordinate with the army, the police. So we need to now treat Bnei Brak as if it were Shechem. Now, the army pushed back immediately and said they actually were not going in to recruit. The police said they went in to recruit, and the assumption being that's a provocation. You send female soldiers into an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood to recruit for the army. What do you expect will happen? Well, as you said in your introduction, they weren't going there to recruit. They were going to meet with those who are already recruits. But even if they were going to recruit, how dare you, Israeli police, how dare you tell the army that they need your approval in order to do that? What is the meaning of sovereignty? So on that level, what we saw was a total breakdown of sovereignty. The issue here goes even deeper than that. What was the reaction of the Likud politicians, the ultra-Orthodox politicians, of course? What did they say? What they always say. It's a small fringe.
That's after they condemn. They condemn. Oh, you always. But then they undermine the condemnation by saying it's not a problem.
It's not a problem because it's a fringe, and hint, hint, you shouldn't have sent in soldiers, certainly not female soldiers, because we all know that that's a provocation. But this idea that we're dealing with a fringe phenomenon when the state has allowed the ultra-Orthodox politicians, government ministers, the chief rabbi to openly call for revolt, for ignoring the army's call-up notices. The chief rabbi called on ultra-Orthodox young men to flush the call-up notices down the toilet. This is a man who gets his salary from the state. He is upholding sovereignty. And yet we have this surreal situation of those who are called upon to uphold the sovereignty of the state actively undermining it. So it's not a small minority of rioters. Yes, the chief rabbi didn't go out in the streets and riot, but there's a direct line between the rioters and the chief rabbi's call to ignore the army's call-up notices. It is all of one piece, which is the undermining of the foundations of sovereignty.
Now, I want to reiterate what this chaos that is emerging. It's a chaos and a crisis of sovereignty from 2 different directions. One direction is there's a minority group which is pushing back against the government, and the government is saying, okay, if you push back, I'll come to this later because you're a coalition partner, and I'll explain about, because you're pushing back, I'm receding. I'm stepping away, and I'm allowing you to be sovereign over your space. You're Jenin. In the case of Israeli Arab Palestinians, they're actually asking us to be sovereign. They're asking us to please help fight this crime. But the country's saying, I don't want to be sovereign. So here it is. In one case, a majority is pushing back against the nation's sovereignty. And in the other case, the nation itself is stepping back and saying, I really don't want to be sovereign over you. Just like Smotrich says, it's you. You're not an Israeli, just like the nation state law, which doesn't recognize that there's any other that there's citizenship here for other people. You're not mine. The minister of Israel. So there's this one case, there's a pushback. In the other case, in both cases, the government is abdicating its responsibility.
Yeah, I think the problem is even deeper than that. Because in the government's relationship with the Haredim, with the ultra-Orthodox, there's an indulgence of of the community's rejection of authority because they are needed to uphold Netanyahu's coalition. In the case of the Arab Israelis, there's an active contempt, a denial that you are part of us. You can't be part of a Jewish state. Not only you're Arabs, you're enemies. And so the way that that's expressed, because this government doesn't yet have the legal power, which it wishes it had, to disenfranchise the Arab minority, it's effectively disenfranchising by rescinding the protection of sovereignty on the minority.
Right. So it's like, and that it comes from Smotrich and Ben-Gvir's not by accident, because they want sovereignty over land.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not
about the state. It's about the land.
It's about the land. And so as long as I'm sovereign over the land, I don't want sovereignty. I don't even want you here. It's like, but it's they're not even on their map. But that leads us, I think, also to one of the critical differences between the Israeli Arab Palestinian, and I'm going to call them Israeli Arab Palestinian, you're going to call them Israeli Arab, and that's fine because those are the two names that they use. Like, there isn't a consensus on that, and so
amongst themselves.
So we're not being politically. We're just between the two of us. We're covering.
I
all
always
the groups.
try to be politically correct.
I know that's just
who I am.
That's just, it's not even your fault. It's that you can't even help.
It's just my instinct.
You're just instinct. You're just such a good boy. But I think the other dimension, and I want to be the one to say this so that you don't get carried away with this.
Is this a Netanyahu moment?
It's not even a Netanyahu moment.
I love when you attack Netanyahu. You free me of my responsibility.
The reason why this government is not even trying to exert its sovereignty is because its primary agenda, it has two agendas. One is sovereignty at the borders. And it's true, this is a profoundly dangerous time. And survival. Ministers could say anything. When a minister says a statement like this, like Smotrich said today, you'd expect a prime minister who, when they are elected, every prime minister always says, I'm going to be the prime minister of everyone, like everyone. Or when Smotrich yesterday says, Jews are going to resettle in Gaza. Now, the government is in the midst of a multi-stage Gaza peace plan of some form, in which it has agreed to withdraw from Gaza. Maybe it has agreed not to withdraw completely until Hamas, beyond the orange line, until Hamas disarms itself. But it's working in a move. And here is your minister of the third most important minister, or the second most important minister in the government, is saying, I don't care what the country. It's like, it's me.
He has his own foreign policy. Donniel, it's interesting because the coalition arrangement is inherently a very delicate dance. If you look at how coalition politics has played out from the beginning in this country, each ministry functions semi-autonomously. Now, if you have a government that really is conscious of itself as the guardian of sovereignty, there will be some minimal red line which no ministry will cross.
But you also make sure that those, and I want to speak about this later, that the most significant ministries represent the sovereign interests of the country. Now, Gallant, why was Gallant fired? Do you remember? You remember there was a minister, Gallant, who was
Rings a bell.
It was the minister of defense for the first year or so of the war. He's fired. Why? Because the official reason, he and Netanyahu disagreed. So here it is. You have a minister explicitly undermining the foreign policy of the state of Israel. And he doesn't even get a condemnation because the job of the ministers is not principally to enable the country to implement its policy. That's what sovereignty means. It's to hold on to a space and to govern in accordance with your policies. The goal of this government is simply to survive. And so as long as it survives, the focus is on maintaining Netanyahu as prime minister. And the price we are paying, you use the word anarchy, chaos. It just doesn't matter. The ministers who wake up in the morning, the fundamental question is not, are you a minister helping Israel run itself? Your primary issue is, are you enabling the perpetuation of this
So in other
government?
words, the question of sovereignty shifts from the nation to the government.
To the government.
That's
The
right.
government wants to rule to the exclusion of all others, not to rule the country to the exclusion of all others. And in this environment, you see this anarchy. There's anarchy in the Haredi community. There's anarchy in the Israeli Arab Palestinian reality, crime, and the government's response. There's anarchy in Judea and Samaria. There's anarchy in the government itself, the ministers. There's anarchy in the attorney general. The attorney general, because it's not only one-sided, the attorney general has one of her core jobs is to defend the government to the Supreme Court. One of her core, she says, I'm not doing that anymore. She's just not, the whole system, the minister of defense, the minister.
I'll come to her defense, which is that
I know.
when you have a situation where the government is actively sabotaging national sovereignty in so many areas, just in that one area she's supposed to uphold the government.
I accept
it is a crisis of sovereignty.
I accept that. The minister of justice refused yesterday to state that if the Supreme Court gives a ruling, he's not committing to accept the ruling of the Supreme Court of the country. So you have this dismantling, and I have to tell you, it's a very strange experience. And to our audience, it's a strange experience for Israelis. It's just this decay is so total and complete. And at the same time, we're trying to maintain secure borders on the outside, and the country is falling apart on the inside because there's no balabait. What's the term balabait in Hebrew? There's no one home.
No one's in charge.
No one's in charge because what they're trying to, maybe that's not true. They are in charge. They're in charge of dealing with Iran, that they are, or to the extent that we spoke about this, that Trump lets us be sovereign. And they're in charge of trying to maintain their coalition.
I think you've hit on a really important point here, which is that in the latest iteration of the Israeli right, there has been a redefining of their responsibility for sovereignty. Their sovereignty is twofold: the physical protection of the country's sovereignty from external threat, and internally, the protection of the government from threat. Those are now, and the protection of the leader. That is now the definition of how the right understands sovereignty. Now, there's a tremendous irony here, Donniel, because traditionally, the right has been the upholder of the integrity of the state. Think about Jabotinsky and Menachem Begin. The state and the integrity of the state and the honor of the state was so integral to how the right saw itself. So how did this happen? How did we get there? Now, obviously,
they also critiqued the left as not.
That's right. Exactly.
As allowing chaos and anarchy and not being strong enough.
Right.
And
not appreciating. We waited 2,000 years for this state, and you're treating it with disrespect. So how did we get here? So, and the irony is even more deep. The irony is even deeper than that, because you remember Ben Gvir's election slogan in the last campaign.
Mishilut. How do we translate that term?
To impose sovereignty.
To impose sovereignty.
To govern. And to impose the authority of government.
That's right.
And Ben Gvir's slogan was Mipo Balabait. Who here is the sovereign? And under Ben Gvir, we are losing whole parts of sovereign Israel. And so why? How did this happen? Now, one reason is what you touched on earlier, which was the part of the right that really cares about the land more than the state. The land of Israel has because it has sanctity, and the state is a secular entity. The land of Israel has greater weight than the state of Israel. I had a friend, Arthur Cohen, who was a writer and a Jewish philosopher in New York. He died many years ago. And he used to write me letters. This is in the 1980s, shortly after I moved to Israel. And letters, actually, you remember letters, and he would address it, my name, my address, and he would write, the state of Israel. And I asked him, I said, why the state of Israel? He said, I'm making a point. It's not the land of Israel. You live in the state of Israel. And I thought, what a nutnik. Really, really, Arthur, it's like, who cares? The postman doesn't care. I don't care. And yet there was something in retrospect, he was right. He was right that we didn't see clearly enough the threat to the integrity of the state that was coming from the land. So that was one. And where we saw that in the most practical way, and this is something that we can understand perhaps best retroactively, the early years of the Gush Emunim settlement movement. The Gush Emunim was founded in 1974, the labor government, the first government of Yitzhak Rabin, and Gush Emunim declares war on the sovereignty of the Rabin government, the Rabin government's right to determine the creation of new communities. And they begin creating facts on the ground, which is the term that they used. And that poisonous term, facts on the ground, to my mind, was the beginning of the right's sabotaging itself, its own deepest commitment to sovereignty.
It's almost like ideology trumped sovereignty.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Ideology trumped it. Yeah. There's one other thing as we're coming to an end, at the conclusion. I'll give you the last word, though, that I wanted to add, and that is, as I watch the Haredi community, overturning the police cars and mobbing and attacking and these Israeli soldiers and even the police. And as we saw this the soldier running out, she was protected and got by a very tall senior officer of the police, as if that's his, like, here it is. Again, it's like, it looked like Shderot, because the police are the unsung heroes since October 7th. We know, we pray for the army and we thank them. And the police day in and day out are saving Israeli citizens. And they're true heroes. And this officer is literally protecting this with his body, this soldier.
And the image of two young Israeli soldiers fleeing,
and they're protecting.
Yeah.
So I ask, what is the Haredi? What did the mob even think they're doing? Are they helping their cause? What is it that they're, in their own minds, they're doing right now? And in Israel, the hatred and animosity towards them has just, if it could have increased, it increased again. But I thought it was that. Yeah. And what is it that they're imagining? And the reverse of that is the Israeli Arab Palestinian who's actually calling on the police, calling on the government to say, please come. I think at issue here is the relationship between tribal identities and collective identity. Now, every collective has tribes. You can use the word tribes, you can use the word groups, you can use the word denominations. There's no such thing as a single identity collective. Whether it's in government, it could be in Canada, provinces, the United States, states, it could be ethnic minorities. You always have, every community is a community of communities, just about. Immigrants come in, it always happens. It always happens. So the fact that Israel is a tribal country is self-evident, and we know that. And the former president of Israel, in his famous speech about the four tribes of Israel, it was a lovely speech speaking about the multi-identity. He just forgot that it's not four; it's actually 57 tribes. So it was sweet that he thought there was only four. But whatever it is, tribal identity is at the core, and as you said, it's also at the core of coalition governments. Each party has a tribe. It's not just a political position, it's a tribal identity. Sometimes ethnic, sometimes religious, sometimes literally national as well. But a particular tribal identity could work within the context of a collective if there is some balance. Could I take you to the book of Numbers, chapter 32? I'm actually studying it and writing a paper on this. There's this moment when the Jewish people are about to enter into the land of Israel the second time. The first time we told God, no, you took us out of Egypt to either kill us in the desert, or you took us out of Egypt to kill us in the promised land. We're not buying. God has a temper tantrum, says, enough, 40 years, not interested until all of you die. Everybody dies except for Moses and Joshua. And Moses is schlepping this people. He's already exhausted. They're about to enter into the land, and they're about to cross over because they're going from what we now know as Jordan. They're about to cross the Jordan River. And the tribe of Reuven and Gad come to Moses and say to him, Moses, I know that's the promised land, and I know it's a land filled with honey and Eretz Zavat Chalab, with milk and everything. It's just the best. But we're shepherds, and this place we're right here now on Jordan. The pastures here are nicer. We've decided not to go in. This is going to be our promised land. You see Moses literally having a meltdown. A total meltdown. He's platzing, as we say in the technical. Totally, again, am I going to have to schlep for it? Because God's not going to let me go. I have another 40 years I'm going to have. This is just too. He turns to us, what are you doing? And he has this famous line where he says, if your brothers and sisters are going to go to war, are you going to sit here? Where's your responsibility? But then he continues, he says, if you don't come in, the rest of the people, you're going to break their spirit. You're going to break their spirit. And they're going to turn around again. And we've been at this, we've seen what do you really want to do this to the Jewish people again? And their response to him is remarkable. They say, Moses, I hear you. I hear you. You have a point. We can't break the spirit of our people. We have a responsibility to the people. But I also have a responsibility to my tribe. So this is what we're going to do. You see where we are right now? We're going to build cities for our families and for our flocks. We're going to protect our claim, because this is where we're going to live. And then we are going to march with the rest of the Jewish people, the rest of the children of Israel. We will be chalutzim, meaning we will be first to battle, and we will only return home. Our armies, our male soldiers will only return home after all of Israel inherits the land. And Moses, who's not a compromising guy, that's not what prophets usually do. They have the truth. They don't know compromise. He says, oh, okay. You need this? I hear you. You're trying to tell me there's a different balance between tribal and collective needs? Then I assume, got you. My agenda is to make sure that your tribal needs don't undermine the communal needs. But if you find a way to balance it, then we're good. And so this model says that the collective can't undermine the legitimate needs of the tribe, and the tribe has to understand that it is part of a collective. And it has a responsibility. Part of the breakdown, this chaos, this lack of sovereignty, is that the whole system is falling apart. First, it falls apart on the tribal level. The tribal level doesn't trust that the government has any agenda or is trying to protect them, or they believe that as sovereignty is breaking down, their only responsibility is to look out for themselves. And the government is not demanding of them to stand up. It's not demanding of them to say, 1 second, what is I understand your needs, but where do your needs fit within the larger collective needs. This is the conversation it can't have with the ultra-Orthodox. By the way, it's never had it either with Israeli Arab Palestinians at a mature level saying, what's your role in the society? Mm-hmm. And so we say, listen, you don't have a role. I don't care about you. So everybody is just pulling. And what you have here is the Jewish state is fighting to maintain its sovereignty over its borders and its land. And inside, within the last X number of years, the tribes are pulling apart and the country is rescinding its sovereignty in the homeland of the Jewish people. Any thoughts, last reflections on this anarchic moment, as you called it?
I think that's a beautiful lens through which to try to unpack this moment. Our situation in some ways is reversed. Not only don't we have a Moses, but our leader is encouraging separatism. And my complaint is not with the Haredim. It isn't even with well, I mean, Smotrich is part of the government.
But he's not your primary problem.
No. My problem really is with the leadership, the top leadership in this country, and the abrogation of the responsibility of sovereignty. And I think that the more we were unpacking this, the more it became clear to me that this is the issue that's going to define the next election. Are we going to return to a normative understanding of national sovereignty, or are we going to allow the right's new reinterpretation, distorted understanding of sovereignty to become the new Israeli norm? That, for me, is the fundamental issue that we're going to be deciding.
Well said, my friend. Yossi, a pleasure to be with you.
Truly a pleasure.